Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
Welcome to the Benjamin Dixon Show. I am your host, Benjamin Dixon. Today is Monday, December 16, 2019. If you're wondering why the show is late today, it's because my lovely, beautiful, and amazing wife is out of town and I have the kids I've had the kids by myself all weekend. And can I just say shout out to all the mothers out there who make this stuff look so easy? I mean, don't get me wrong. Listen, I take care of my kids all the time on a regular, but doing that by yourself. Yeah. So I'm surprised I'm even getting a podcast out today, period. So anyway, I hope you had a great weekend. Let's jump into some politics. So this weekend, yesterday was the last day for you to sign up for Obamacare, for the Affordable Care Act. That's because Donald Trump, as soon as he got into office, did all that he could to minimize the number of signups, and he shortened the sign-up period. It used to go all the way till New Year's Eve, but now it stops on the 15th of December. In addition to that move, the Republicans have been consistently undermining the legislation since it passed. I'm framing it this way because I want to give the full picture before I attack it. I signed up for Obamacare this weekend. You know, I'm an independent contractor. I have my own business, you know, this show and some other things. And so I get insurance through the exchanges. And let's just say the price, I can tell you the cheapest price for just me and my wife was $570 a month with a $16,000 copay. I shared that on Twitter, and turns out that's kind of like what everyone is experiencing. The basic plan, like the cheapest plan, not the cheapest, but the plan that I needed to get was like $700 a month with an $11,000 copay. It's not just me. You know, we're in pretty healthy condition. You know, we're not, not that should be calculated into someone's cost, because I thought we got past that. But it's not just me. People were sharing their stories online all weekend about how utterly exorbitant the price of healthcare is on the exchanges. Now, embedded in that conversation is what I started off with. Republicans have been undermining Obamacare since it was initiated. They've done everything to inflate the cost to make the situation exactly like it is. Here's the thing. Any legislation that is that vulnerable to hyperpartisanship, any legislation that has so many, it's not the complexity of it that I'm talking about. It's the many different entry points that depended on Republican participation that gave them so many different ways they can screw us. That's what makes Obamacare, in addition to being a quote unquote free market solution, that's what makes Obamacare suck. It required too much participation from Republicans. It depended too much on Republican governors expanding the Medicaid. It depended too much on the swing. See, here's what happened. They assumed in a lot of ways that it was going to be a Democratic president after Obama. They counted on it. They counted on it so much that they let Ruth Bader Ginsburg stay on the bench and not pressure her out. And so because they made a bad gamble, we're now stuck with legislation, with a system that is completely untenable, that is nothing more. And this is the problem. It is a conservative piece of legislation. Obamacare was always a conservative piece of legislation. It was always a giveaway to the healthcare industry, to insurance providers. I mean, literally, it's just pouring money into insurance providers. It never fixed the fundamental problem of profit companies seeking profit in the healthcare industry. That is the fundamental problem. When you allow companies to exploit the sick and the dying for profit, what won't a person pay to live? Let me play a quick snippet of something Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said that I think is poignant at this point.
People's lives are not commodities. When we talk about economics, there's something known as a demand curve with elasticity. And with every other commodity, you can say, how much is this phone worth to you? And you can say $100, $200. You can buy a Nokia phone. You can not have a phone at all. But you cannot ask the question, how much will you pay to be alive? How much will you pay to live? Because the answer is everything. The answer is you will pay $10, you will pay $1,000, you will go into debt, you will do anything to live. And that is what makes the price of medicine different than the price of an iPhone. Thank you very much.
Period. But because, I mean, she's talking about the price of prescription medicine, right? But think about just the price of care in general, going to a hospital. Like, what won't a person pay to get treatment for their cancer? And because companies know this, they are exploitative, and we are just comfortable. We just seem to be okay in this country with an entire industry making its profit off of people with cancer. It's not about people working for free. It's never been about people working for free. No one expects people in the healthcare industry to work for free. No one expects doctors to work for free. But what we should not expect is for companies to sit as middlemen and collect billions of dollars in profits and raise prices so exorbitantly that people can't afford to even get care. Obamacare is a failure because it was too dependent on cooperation from Republicans. It was too dependent on a Democratic president being elected after President Obama. And now, because of all of those things and because of all the ways Republicans have attacked it, the prices are extremely, ridiculously high. And people cannot survive. People cannot afford. So we're faced with the same situation that we were faced with before. You could always go and get health care on your own. You know who's not? You know who this benefits? It benefits people who have jobs and their employers are extremely generous and they have really affordable health care. And now they can extend that health care coverage to their children until they're 27. But for the rest of us who are out here hustling, out here, trying to make things work, we're struggling. We're dying. We can't afford this. And so the next person I see defending Obamacare over Medicare for all, the first thing I'm going to ask them is the first thing that you should ask them. Are they on Obamacare? Do they even know how expensive Obamacare is? Because what I think has happened is you have a lot of people, you have a lot of liberals who like the idea that Obama did something, right? He did something. Never mind that what he did was based on the flawed principle of making profit off of people that are dying of cancer, leukemia, who need dialysis. Never mind that. He did something. And because he did something and it was Obama, it has to be good. But a lot of the people who promote Obamacare don't have to pay for it. They're not on it. They're getting health care from the best employers from the best health insurance their employers could provide. So they're not on it. So they can't possibly. And then if they are on it, they're getting the tax credit that helps them pay for it. But the only way you get the tax credit that helps you pay for it is because you're extremely poor. And as soon as you get a few more dollars, you no longer get that tax credit, that premium credit. And now you're stuck with $1,000 a month with a $5,000 copay. Medicare for all. I'm going to be honest with you. If you don't support Medicare for all as a candidate, I cannot support you. I will not vote for somebody who is not pushing. This doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean that it's going to automatically win. It doesn't mean that the courts aren't going to challenge it. There's all kind of hurdles. But damn it, if we don't fight for it, why should any company forget about a person, forget about appealing to the humanity of people, right? Forget about appealing to people's emotions and concern about people who are sick and dying, because we see in this country, we don't really give a F about people who are sick and dying. What we need to focus on is the fact that there's an entire industry that makes its profit off of people dying of cancer, leukemia, who need dialysis, people with heart problems, the people who are the most vulnerable. There is somebody sitting back collecting dividends off of that. That is something that we need to make every proponent of this system that we currently have, make them defend that. How do you explain? How do you justify somebody becoming a billionaire off of cancer patients? Answer that.
Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show.
All right, hard shift time. You know what time it is. It's time to thank all of our newest patrons for coming aboard. Let's bob. Special thank you to Nicholas Wolf for becoming a patron over the weekend. You, sir, rock. Also, a very special welcome aboard to Natalie Holly. Thank you, ma'am, for becoming a patron. You, too, can join this prestigious and prodigious family by going to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and becoming a patron today. And as always, thank you to each of you who are supporting financially, but also thank you to those of you who just listen and share and talk about it on Twitter. And those of you who suffer through the ads, the patrons get an ad-free version, but thank you to those who listen to the ad version. Just let it play. Like, listen to my show 5 times in a row. Like, just let it play through and let all those wonderful, amazing commercials play. That's one way you can support. All right, let's get to the news. So it's coming out that Congressman Jeff Van Drew, a Democrat, is turning coat. He's a congressman for New Jersey's 2nd District. He is turning coat on behalf of Donald Trump. He did not support the impeachment inquiry, and now he is becoming a Republican. He's leaving the Democratic Party to become a Republican because of the impeachment proceedings. Now, he's a freshman. This is his first term. And here's the irony of this. The Democratic Party, the DNC, the DCCC, they got involved in the race and suppressed, pushed back, froze out Tansy Youngblood, a black woman progressive, on behalf of Jeff Van Drew. And isn't that just the greatest irony? I mean, she was too progressive for them, so they went with the centrist. They went with the guy who, it was New Jersey. Don't get me wrong, there are Republicans in New Jersey, but there's a good possibility that you can have a very strong blue seat in Jersey, so you can afford to have a progressive there. But instead of allowing them to fight it out in the primaries, the DCCC got involved and essentially crushed the opponent, a black woman, progressive. See, intersectionality, strike that. Identity politics. No, that's not the word I want. A person's identity only means something to the Democratic Party so long as they can weaponize it for centrism. But as soon as you're a black woman who is, that's the crown jewel of the Democratic Party. And I'm not saying that ironically. Literally, the black women are the backbone of the Democratic Party without question. Ask Doug Jones in Alabama. He would not be senator right now without black women. Right? Now, that only goes so far with the establishment, because the moment you make the transgression of actually being progressive and actually advocating for policies that are going to help working people, then they don't give a damn if you're a black woman. They don't care if you're a queer black woman who's disabled. They don't care what your identity is. They will crush you because of your progressive policies. That is the sad reality. And now they've got a turncoat. They supported the wrong candidate. They crushed the progressive candidate. And now the person that they supported, Jeff Van Drew, is becoming a Republican. Thankfully, there's enough votes where his one turncoat ass is not going to stop the impeachment proceedings. But the lesson should still be the same. but they're never going to learn the lesson because the Democratic establishment would rather play fire with people like Jeff Van Drew and Joe Manchin from West Virginia. They would rather play with fire like that. People who would just as soon vote for Trump and with Trump than they would risk getting progressives in there who would do something for the people. Listen, I've done my best. I have done my, everyone listening to me, I've done my very best to play nice during these primaries. I've been all kumbaya, even kumbaya for strategic reasons. But it's time to burn the Democratic establishment to the ground, and from its ashes, allow progressives to actually do something on behalf of people. That is what they fear the most. This is why Nancy Pelosi has to go. This is why Chuck Schumer has to go. They are literally in there advocating for politicians who will more likely side with capital, side with big business, side with Republicans. They would rather that than to have a progressive in there who will side with working people. And now the chickens are coming home to roost. They're losing the candidate to Republicans. The Republican Party is getting a new turncoat, new traitor, and he would not have been there if the DCCC had supported the progressive candidate in the race. Let me make the point a little clearer. Yesterday, Neera Tanden, the president of the largest and the biggest, most funded progressive, with air quotes, think tank. She's the president of Center for American Progress. Yesterday, she tweeted out a Fox News poll. Nothing wrong with Fox News polls when they do the scientific poll, right? We're not talking about the opinion polls that they do, and they only survey Republicans. Fox actually knows how to do some scientific polling. But Neera Tanden decided to use the poll to show that, and this is what she said, people won't admit this on Twitter. I'm paraphrasing. She said, people will not admit this on Twitter, but building a wall is more popular than a single payer healthcare system. Here, you have to see the problem with that kind of statement. Here you are, the president of the largest and the best funded. I mean, they got money to burn. Quote unquote progressive think tank. And you are suggesting ever so subtly that we should triangulate and consider that we shouldn't go after single payer because it's not as popular as the Republicans going after the wall. Never mind the fact that Republicans have been unified behind Donald Trump, behind this idea of the wall since Donald Trump got into office. Republicans know how to get in line and support whatever the hell the president wants. Add to that the fact that you've had nothing but attacks from the Democratic establishment on top of the Republicans don't even have to do that much work attacking. You realize that? Republicans have not had to do that much work attacking Medicare for all because people like Neera Tanden and the Democratic establishment have been attacking it. And so instead of Neera Tanden, who has so much power, so many connections, and so much funding, instead of her using her power to change opinions, to shape the discourse, to educate people on why single payer is the way to go, what she's saying is, guys, you're going after the wrong thing. It's not as popular as the wall. You literally have the tools at your disposal to change public opinion. You literally have the funds to educate people, even educate Republicans, as impossible as that seems. But instead, what do? What the establishment always does. What the Democratic establishment always does. I expect this from Republicans, but the Democratic establishment always capitulates to capital. They always capitulate to big business. They capitulate. They do everything they can to protect business interests at the expense of working people. They have to go. Every single one of them has to go. From every person that was ever associated with the Clinton administration, they have all become so jaded and so embedded with capital interests, with financial interests, with Wall Street, that there is no distinguishable difference. And you can say, oh, well, they're not as racist. They're not as racist as Republicans. I agree. They're not as racist as Republicans. But look what they would do to black people as soon as a black person speaks from a progressive perspective. Look what they did in New Jersey. Look what they did to the black woman in the race. They sided with the white man centrist. And now that son of a is turning code. That's the problem that we have to root out. Okay, a little more from the news. This weekend, the Army-Navy football game took place, and I'm sure you know, a couple of officers or cadets or whatever the hell you call these guys, decided to use the occasion of national television to flash the white power symbol. And the question that people still like to obtusely ask is whether or not the OK symbol, you know, what people used to throw and say, okay, everything's okay. You know, anybody in a fraternity knows the Kappa Alpha Psi, they throw it up. That's their symbol. But they like to obtusely ask the question whether or not that means white power. Because they try. It started off as a troll. Let's give the background. I've covered this before, but I need to cover it again. It started off as a troll. White people, white supremacists, people part of 4chan, they wanted to take a symbol that was rather innocuous and use that as a secret meaning between them to represent white power. But that when people called it out, they could say, you know, plausible deniability. It's just the OK symbol. Here's the thing, as I've covered and as anyone with common sense would know, and the only reason I'm actually taking the time to explain this on this show is because that's like what you guys pay me to do. But in general, I wouldn't waste my time with disingenuous actors who know full well the connotation that they're trying to communicate, the meaning that they have imbued into the symbol. They know exactly what it means. White supremacists know exactly what it means, but they will intentionally pretend as though there's nothing to this because that's the joke. That's the gag. Here's the thing. Meanings transcend the original creator's intent. While they meant for this just to be a gag, a secret meaning that they could use to troll, it very quickly took on the connotation that they meant for it in the first place, right? It very quickly, people saw through the BS and said, oh, this is your new symbol. Okay. Thank you for letting us know. Thank you for telling us with your own words. Thank you for telling us with your viral videos. Thank you for telling us in your tweets. Thank you for telling us in your podcast. You've made it very clear from Milo Yiannopoulos all the way down to these boys at the Army-Navy game. You have made it very clear what it means. Now, that's what we're going to accept it as. Don't get it twisted. The swastika was not originally a Nazi symbol. But you sure as hell better believe when we see a swastika now, 100% means white supremacy, hatred, anti-Semitism. There was a guy. I don't have the details of the story. I just know in general, a guy who lives across the street from a school put out a school full of minorities, put out a Confederate flag and a swastika. And he said, oh, I'm not racist. It doesn't mean racism. Like people who still try to say the Confederacy, the Confederate flag is not the symbol of hate. You literally fought a war. You literally fought a war to keep people enslaved underneath that banner. You think you could tell us what it means? But you cannot engage with people who intend on engaging disingenuously. That is their intent. And I would not suggest you waste a lot of time trying to explain to people who have every intention of not engaging in good faith. But I will take the time to explain to you, my audience, because, well, that's what we do here, and that's what you pay me to do. so many amazing stories this weekend. Like, I had to. I mean, never mind the fact that I'm in between every segment. I'm going in to check on my little boy because I'm here by myself today. But there's so many amazing stories that happened over the weekend that I just have to cover them. One of them, I think it is a fascinating story. It's a sad story, politically speaking, and in terms of, the progressive space. It's sad to me to see Bernie Sanders have to retract his endorsement of Cenk Uygur. I really don't talk much about Cenk and his campaign. He was running to replace the seat of the congresswoman who stepped down because of revenge porn. I rock with Cenk. Generally speaking, I'm not a huge TYT fan, but you can't not recognize the work that they've done and all of the amazing things that they've done for progressive media, right? That said, it really upset me to see Bernie have to retract his endorsement. But then on the flip side, I'm just talking to you right now. You can call it analysis or whatever. I'm just talking. On the flip side, I felt like we've been doing this long enough to know that this was going to happen. I know hindsight is 20/20, but when you get into politics, you can't afford to have hindsight. You have to have foresight. And people who are upset with centrists using Cenk's past to attack him, well, I mean, literally, that's what we do in politics. Everybody, you do it, I do it, I'm going to do it. I'm going to hold you accountable for some shit you said 30 years ago. Yes, I am. Should I let it go? In the real world, yes. In politics, no. That's the nature of politics, right? And you kind of had the feeling that this was going to happen. And I just wish that there was enough people on that team, on both teams, to have the foresight enough to say, this may not work out well for anyone involved. That's just my personal wish. Now, is it an attack by the centrists who are trying to keep a progressive out of that seat? Yeah, absolutely, without a doubt. And we need firebrand progressives. I'm so sick and tired of the establishment. They can kiss my black ass. So we do need people like Cenk Uygur to be up there, despite whatever he said in the past, right? Everybody's problematic. Everybody is problematic. There is not a person on this planet who is not problematic. I may be your favorite, but I am problematic. Okay. There's some stuff that I've done and I've said. I just was lucky enough to not say it on the internet. The stuff that I don't do in public, so, but I'm also smart enough not to run for office. Right. And this is the crazy thing. I'm just shooting the breeze at this point. Like, if you've got crazy stuff in your past, why the hell would you run for office? I'm not talking about Cenk in general, or Cenk at all. I'm talking about like how many white people feel cavalier enough. I mean, like, they got caught smoking, crack and doing cocaine with 8 prostitutes, and a dead body in the trunk, and then they want to run for office. Most black people understand how this system works. Like, we know they're going to take that one time we got caught with weed and they're going to make it the biggest thing that ever happened. And I'm not having this conversation to talk about privilege, but that's privilege. Like, that's some really self-centered privilege where you think that your baggage isn't. And again, I'm not talking about Cenk, because what he did was, like, he said some horrible things about women, right? Thank God that I was not online when I had horrible thoughts about women, when I was a misogynistic pig, or when I was a homophobe. Thank goodness I have no track record of that, only what I tell you. And I'm not going to tell you anymore because you're not going to use that shit against me. So I'm not talking about Cenk. I'm just saying, look at all the people who are running. Look at all the people we do elect. I mean, they're criminals. And I'm not talking in the figurative war criminal sense. I'm talking about they've raped people. They have dead bodies in the trunk. Like, they've had like entire orgies where they were coked out strippers and all kinds of madness. And they still feel like they're qualified to run for office because, you know what? There are people in this country that are held accountable for their shit, and there are people in this country who are never held accountable. Can I piss you off? Probably. Yes, I'm about to. Michael Vick paid for his crimes. He went to jail and paid for his crimes. And once he came out, he actively worked against the very thing that he was involved in. He changed his ways, and he's become an advocate and done more against animal cruelty than some of the people who are trying to make sure that he never gets another chance in this country. There are people who are held accountable, and then there are people who are not. And the people who are not held accountable, they're generally the same complexion, and then they run for office. Meanwhile, Cenk is being held accountable for stuff that he said. Okay, fine. That's the way this goes. That's the way the system, that's the way the cookie crumbles. I'm not saying that if you got something in your past that you shouldn't run, but I am saying you better know full damn well that if you're not a white Republican, you're going to be held accountable for everything. And guess what? It won't be Republicans holding you accountable first. It will be Democrats in the establishment holding you accountable for that little, I was going to say ounce of weed. That's actually a lot of weed, but that little nickel bag that you got caught with when you were a teenager. They will call you out. They will reverse identity politics on you. Oh, the show's going to go a little bit longer. I thought it was about to end. No, I got more stuff to talk about. They will reverse the identity of politics attack on you. Where if you're a centrist and you fall in line, if Cenk Uygur was a centrist protecting the establishment, then nobody would have tried to hold him accountable for what he did. He would have Democratic establishment women coming to his rescue saying, oh, but he treated me so kind. It is selective outrage, but that's what we do in politics. And so while I know it's selective outrage, I also know that I needed someone on Bernie's team as well as Cenk's team to know that that was going to happen so that we could have avoided what happened this weekend.
Pretty white TT, 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 pretty white TT.
All right. Last story for the day. I guess I could have saved some of this for tomorrow, but what the hell? It's here now. I also want to state for the record that I've done my very best to not beat the drum of against identity politics, specifically weaponized identity politics. And the reason for that is because I need people to understand the importance of identity politics, right? That there are literally issues that happen to us simply because of our identity. And to dismiss our identity is to dismiss us. And if you dismiss identity politics, then you're dismissing an entire political segment in a constituency. That means you are politically, you're committing political malpractice, right? I think everyone listening can say I've done my wholehearted best to thread that needle with nuance. But my weaponized identity politics spidey senses are tingling. And I sense danger. I want to read a tweet from Charles Blow. I think he's with the New York Times now. I'm not sure who he's with, but he used to be on MSNBC all the time. This is what he said. Quote, every time I hear, quote unquote, free college, my mind immediately goes to reparations. How exactly is there no money to pay reparations to the descendants of the enslaved, but there are dollars to send every student to college for free? How, Sway? Because the majority of college students is still white. Okay, end quote. Yeah, I did my best. You know, we coined the phrase weaponized identity politics. I've got videos on it from 2015, 2016, because this is the game they played in 2015, 2016 to attack Bernie Sanders. And it looks like they're trying to do it again. But they're not attacking Bernie Sanders straight on in this tweet. He's attacking a universal program that would benefit the hell out of the black community. You dumb, fatuous prick. Do you not understand that the biggest percentage of debt, college debt, is most concentrated with black women? You unfathomably disingenuous. Like, you're trying to use the fight for reparations as a wedge against free college, which will absolutely benefit the black community disproportionately so, because the highest concentration of debt is with black women. Student debt is with black women. It's not that we shouldn't fight for reparations. It's that I've never seen you try to fight for reparations, Charles Blow. And now you want to prop up reparations as a wedge against something that will absolutely benefit the black community. This type of weaponized identity politics is the shit that I don't like. This is the stuff that will make me start calling them out, like dragging them like I did in 2016 and getting everybody else to drag them. Because this is if your way of a black person who I don't know if he has an Ivy League pedigree, but probably went to one of the best schools in this goddamn country, makes well over probably in the 7 figures, but let's say 6 figures comfortably, right? Has health care that he probably doesn't even think about, but just the best health care that money could buy. Could probably send his children, most certainly send his children to Ivy League school. Matter of fact, I think something happened with one of his kids at an Ivy League school. Here's a person in the most privileged of privileged positions trying to keep us working people from getting what we need and using the struggle of the black community as the wedge. Man, if you don't get your... So I'm going to sign off this show by letting you know every time I see somebody doing this, we are going to drag them for filth because they are disingenuously leveraging the struggle of the black community as a wedge to hurt the black community. Medicare for all and college for all would be some of the biggest that would revolutionize the black experience. Do you know how many black entrepreneurs could jump out there and start businesses if they were not trapped on their jobs just for the sake of healthcare? Do you know how many people would go to college? This is the other argument that I'm hearing black people say. Black people don't really go to college anyway. This is a giveaway for white people. You fatuous tool. Do you know how many black people would go to college if they had the money to go or if it was free? Okay, I'm going to dial it back because I'm about to flip this goddamn table over. Because how dare you hurt the black community using the language of trying to help the black community? Not today, Satan. Not today.
The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.patreon.com/The BPD Show and support The Benjamin Dixon Show. If you like this episode, be sure to share, like, and subscribe.